Welcome to another episode of Not From Concentrate, a food podcast for busy brains. I'm Catherine Smart. I'm a writer, a recipe developer, and a food entrepreneur. And like many creatives, I have ADHD. So I'm on a mission to help anyone with a busy brain spark creativity, calm the chaos, and find joy in the kitchen.
This could happen to you. This could happen to you. This could happen to you.
I wanted to take a moment to tell you about the Not From Concentrate newsletter on Substack. Subscribe for free to stay up to date on new episodes and get access to giveaways and bonus content. I also want to give a special shout out to my paid subscribers who get new, wildly delicious and distraction-proof recipes delivered to their inboxes every month, as well as essays and tips for cooking with a busy brain. Plus, paid subscribers get access to my full recipe archive. Head to catherinesmart.com to become a free or paid subscriber, and thank you for supporting the show. Today, I'm chatting with Ammaar and Esteban Perez Mendoza, the co-founders and authors of the ADHD Weasel, a popular newsletter on Substack. The two young entrepreneurs met at the University of British Columbia and started working on an app to prevent food waste. They then transitioned to an app about meal planning, and that introduced them to an active community of ADHDers looking for help in the kitchen. As is often the case, these two pivoted early in the life of their startup. Happily, it was because their side project, this newsletter, was resonating with so many people and growing so quickly. Today, we're going to talk about food overwhelm, flexible meal planning, and what they've learned from their growing community about overcoming challenges to feeding yourself and eating well with ADHD. Ammaar and Esteban Perez Mendoza, welcome to Not From Concentrate.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for being here. So for folks who might not recognize you because you are mostly hidden behind an avatar of a weasel on Substack, you two are the co-authors or co-founders of ADHD Weasel, which is a Substack that has become wildly popular, is incredibly helpful for folks like me with ADHD. And I wanted to have you on to chat about several things, but especially I want to talk about food overwhelm. And there's like a big story behind that and all of this incredible work that you guys have done. So can we start by you guys just giving us a little rundown on how ADHD Weasel came to be? Because I know that it's a real multifaceted story.
Yeah, so Ammaar and I met about 3 years ago, maybe, in college. When we met, we wanted to start a startup, essentially. And it was centered around food waste and just like reducing food waste in our personal like households. And we started with an inventory management mobile app. And essentially that was developed, it was pushed to the world, and it just resonated a lot with the ADHD community. Essentially, months later, we then jumped into talking to ADHDers and finding that food overwhelm was kind of like the core issue. So we just jumped into having calls with users. We realized that ADHD was like an important factor that led people into gravitating towards this sort of like digital inventory system that we had built. And we then, due to our suggestions from mentors, we decided to just like drop what we were building and just focus on understanding ADHD and this relationship with ADHD and food waste and food overwhelm, which ended up being like the core insight that we got from this set of calls that we did from like users that downloaded the app, and also from just like people that we found online that wanted to talk about their experiences with ADHD and food overwhelm and food waste. And it was so insightful that we decided to just throw everything we had built out the window, because it was not intended for ADHDers from the get-go, and just like restart the process with ADHDers as the core of our new solution or new project, essentially. That then led us into building an ADHD meal planner. It was a website. Some months after that, we started working on an app again, now for ADHDers, and essentially migrating the website that we built into a mobile platform. And as we were doing that, we were getting so many different like insights from ADHDers, and we started to connect so much more with this community and essentially just self-diagnosed ourselves as ADHDers as well, as we were just talking to ADHDers, and we realized that we essentially were a part of this community as well. And we were learning so much in our sort of like own research process that we decided to start the ADHD Weasel as another alternative of creating a tool for people that had ADHD and experienced food waste, but other issues as well, and just other struggles that come with just living with ADHD.
Ammaar, I want to hear from you, but first I just want to take a minute, and I think a lot of folks, anyone who's at all entrepreneurial, certainly anybody who has ADHD, is going to just appreciate the grit of that story. I mean, you guys are so young. You're, Esteban, you're just out of school. Ammaar, you're actually speaking to us from a dorm room right now. And you guys have already had multiple iterations, had to, throw away what you were working on. But I think what's so interesting and exciting about what you're doing is you did such a great job listening to your customer and getting that feedback and letting that really inform your journey. And I think that's such an interesting way that you've ended up with ADHD Weasel, which often, what's happening on Substack is it's creators, or it started with writers coming on there. But you guys really came on from a different place. You were coming on as entrepreneurs in sort of a techie world, looking to connect with a new audience. So I just wanted to kind of commend you because I think it's really impressive. But I also wanted to hear, what specifically you learned from that process and how it's helped you understand the needs of the ADHD community, particularly as it pertains to food.
The biggest thing, just talking to people with ADHD, I think we spent over like 3 to 4 months just speaking with people with ADHD. We even talked to like ADHD nutritionists, ADHD coaches, because we were coming into this, we didn't really have a lot of experience with this demographic. So we really came with an open mind and like, okay, let's just talk to them. Let's just learn more about their lives. And that just opened up so much like information, and we just learned an incredible amount. And that's, like Esteban said, the biggest thing was food overwhelm. The planning stage in, when you're cooking for a family, there's just so many different components that come into play. Like, what do I have in the fridge? What's in the inventory? What do my kids like? What is my husband like? What is my partner like? Like, there's just so many different moving parts that it becomes a very stressful process, and that too every week. And sometimes and that's just the meal planning process. And then you have to add on executive function, task paralysis. And there's just so many different things. It's like almost like a stack of problems. And they have to, like, the people who are responsible for cooking on a weekly basis, they have to do this basically every week. And even during the day itself, it's like, okay, I've planned all these meals, but which one do I want to cook now? And it's like, oh, do I have the energy for this? Or do I just want to get some takeout? And so there was just so many different layers. And what we kept hearing, like, there's just this stack of problems. And that's what led us to start the newsletter, which is like, okay, like, we feel like from what we learned, meal planning is a problem, but there's also this like bigger problem that's almost on top, which is just the ADHD symptoms and how that affects their daily lives. And then that also plays into the meal planning.
One of the things that I want to dig into is you guys talk about flexible meal planning. Seemed like something that came up. As somebody who has ADHD, writes ADHD-friendly recipes, that really resonated with me because I get kind of the ick from my own meal planning if I try to be too stringent about it. But I also understand that my life is infinitely easier and better when there is some structure. I know I'm not alone here. So can you unpack that a little bit for us? What is flexible meal planning, and what are some of the learnings that you have from the work that you've done so far?
It's weird, and it's sort of like a weird sort of like paradox, even the flexible word for the ADHD community, because it's like ADHDers need structure, but also need sort of like freedom within that structure. And that's really a personal thing for everyone within the the ADHD community. Something that we found out, and I think let me know if I start deviating here from the main topic in a tangent, but something we heard a lot is that they found this like new meal that they were like obsessed over, and they just had it for like 5 days straight. And then on the 6th day, they would just like get the ick, and it's like, okay, now I need to find a new thing to obsess over. And it's this sort of thing that just it's really specific to this like ADHD community, that is like, okay, I need structure, and some things are like extremely structured, like finding this meal that just works the best for me. But then at the same time, I need some flexibility and have options, but I can't have too many options because then I get overwhelmed. So it's like, it's different. And I think that it's something that comes in a bit of like cycles as well. Sometimes we have like a lot of time and desire to be creative in the kitchen and just like put time into it. And then other times it's like, okay, I just need to eat so that I have enough nutrition to go about my day, and I can put up something in 2 or 5 minutes that is not going to overwhelm me, and it's going to give me enough food for me to function essentially. So it's a really like changing need and like situation where you just need it to adjust to how you're feeling that day. And that's something that was a constant among all of the calls that we had. It's just like this need for adjusting to wherever you're at in the journey of feeding yourself. As crazy as that might sound, is just really a journey, really.
No, that's so interesting. I've never heard it spoken about in the term cycle. And I have to say, as like a woman staring down the barrel of premenopause, I am hearing a lot about cycles these days. But, women a lot of times do identify with, okay, I have to eat differently during certain parts of my cycle. But I've never really thought about it from ADHD. And that's such a true thing, at least in my experience. We have these bursts of creativity, these bursts of energy, and then these kind of fallow times. And if we don't respect that, it can be really easy to get burnt out. So I just think that's a really interesting way to look at it. And I also think about there's often so much shame when we feel like we can't cook the way that we want to or take care of ourselves. And you really have to let go of that and take advantage when you do have that creative energy. So we've identified that sort of cycle constant. Was there any solutions or, ideas that people were bringing to that were things that worked really well for them as far as, respecting those cycles of energy and creativity?
Yeah, something that was a big learning, and I think it's a strategy that a lot of people have tried, is just having some sort of like safe food or struggle meals even. So that gives them some sort of like flexibility or range within, okay, this is a day that I really just need to feed myself. I have this safe meal prepared or like pre-thought essentially, or an important strategy that some people already implement, just having this thing that they can fall back into and just like whenever they need it, they have it there. And depending on where they are at in the cycle, they also have the ability to go out and try new meals as well and keep it exciting. But these like struggle meals and just things that are simple that they know they like and they know they can cook and they're not intimidated by just having to prepare them was important for a lot of people, for sure.
Yeah, and just to add on here, something we tried in the meal planner was giving our users like a range of recipes. So it wasn't just, okay, these are like 5 recipes, go ahead and decide when you want to cook them. It was like, okay, these are like 3 easy recipes that are going to take like, 15 minutes. And by easy doesn't just mean it takes shorter. It's also like the amount of effort you need to put in. Because if it's like 15 minutes and you have to do like a lot of steps, that is like, it's not going to happen. And then, we just did like, easy, medium, hard to like sort of give you a range that Esteban was talking about. And of course, like struggle meals is basically most of the easy ones or even ones that you just like really like. They're sort of, hyper focused on, and it's just every time you eat it, you enjoy it. I think that also helped.
And how did you decide what those meals would be? I know you said you've spoken with dietitians, and I know you've leaned into the resources of, is it the University of British Columbia where you met?
Yeah.
How did you decide what those meals and those recipes would look like?
The way we implemented it was we would ask the person using the tool a bunch of different things. So we would ask them like, okay, how are you feeling right now? And yeah, I think that was one of the initial questions. And it was literally like just brain dump everything that's in your head. So like, oh, I have this ingredient that I really need to use. Yeah, like just list it. Oh, like my children like these things and they really hate these things. And so we just asked the person to like just brain dump everything. And then based on that and also some more categorical data, like are you looking for easy recipes, medium recipes, things like that. And then based off all that information, which like we said, like, you know, meal planning has all this different sort of tasks, we would just ask information about all of them. And then we would in the back figure out what recipes would make most sense using that leftover ingredient, using that ingredient that's going to go bad soon, and taking into consideration their preferences. And then we would suggest them like, you know, 5 or 6 recipes, whatever they ask for.
I see. So still really keeping that like food waste piece of the puzzle. And I love that because it's something I think a lot about with my recipes. I mean, there's no reason that if you're not an ADHDer, you wouldn't enjoy my recipes, but the food waste plays into it. And I think part of that is economic. Part of that is wanting to be environmentally conscious. But I think there is also a specifically ADHD reason where those constraints can be really helpful. I heard someone explain, God, I want to give them credit. And I'm trying to think about who it was. But I heard someone the other day describe like you can play in a playground and kids play there and it's safe because, you know, they know that there's the bounds and so they can play and they can be creative. And sometimes I think we really need those, you know, those restraints can actually be really helpful. And something that I get overwhelmed with a lot is very well-intentioned food writers and journalists will give tons of substitutions or tons of ways to riff. And I can find that really overwhelming actually to kind of like read through all of that. So I'm curious, how do you balance, you know, the flexibility of it and giving people different choices with understanding that you can get back into overwhelm if you give too many options?
That's like $1 million question that we probably don't have the answer to, but I think there's like a balance. It might be a little redundant the answer, but if there's like a balance between the having options but also not having too many options. I think Ammaar touched on this from like having the inputs of like what people have on their sort of like inventory plus what they want to try this particular week. Like thinking in advance, okay, this is a week that I'm going to be really overwhelmed, really busy at work. I might just need easy prep meals, or maybe the other way around. Like I have a lot of free time and I just want to try new meals because I just want to dive into that sort of like journey or sort of like explore that side of the potential meal plan this week. Having that flexibility and that balance between, okay, things that I know I can prep and also things that I know I want to try, it's probably the best answer I could give you to that question.
I had another question. So a lot of what you guys are doing is solving for this problem. I know task initiation comes up a lot. And I love some of the ideas that you guys have, like breaking everything into really small, minuscule tasks. Like the idea of planning dinner or even cooking dinner feels like a ton. But if you started, I think one thing you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like you set a timer for 2 minutes or 5 minutes and you just pull out the ingredients or you start chopping and often the momentum will keep you going. Can you talk a little bit about task initiation and some both problems and solutions that you found there in regards to food prep?
When you're struggling to like start your task, which is like an issue that a lot of ADHDers face, even on a regular basis, there are like a few techniques that people might find helpful. And one of the things we touched on yesterday was just breaking it down. So if there's like a big task that you have to do, and by big, I don't mean like it's actually like, oh, finishing this project. It's big in the sense that for you in the moment, it feels like a really big task. You just break it down into like the smallest first step you can even think of, and to the point where it almost feels silly. For example, if I have to reply to an email, the first task that I would sort of do, and as part of that framework or technique, is like literally just opening up my computer, Because sometimes, like if I'm in bed or whatever, doing something else, coming to my desk and opening the computer is just overwhelming. Just starting off with the very smallest thing and giving yourself permission to, once you do that, you can step away if it's still too overwhelming. That's also like a big aspect. And more often than not, you just come back and you start doing it, even if you don't do it right after that 2-minute timer, just because you've like faced the biggest overwhelming thing, which is just getting started. And that's the same thing that can apply to, cooking, instead of, because I have tried cooking multiple recipes just from YouTube videos, and it is very overwhelming. Even if I have all the ingredients, it's very overwhelming to get it all out and start cooking. And it's like a 1 hour, it's like the YouTube video says it's going to take 10 minutes, but it's going to take me an hour because there's so much back and forth and like me going back in the video, seeing like what step did I miss? What did I not miss? And so, yeah, just breaking it down to the very first thing. So for cooking, it would be, okay, let me just get all the ingredients out. And then I'm going to decide once it's all on the counter, do I really want to go ahead or not?
Or do you want to put all back?
Yeah.
My little setup that I do is I put out a garbage bowl or compost bowl. I take a wet paper towel and put my cutting board on top of it. I get out my chef's knife. And it's like, once that's in place, I feel like I can kind of move forward. I do want to talk about something that I am really kind of hyperfixated on myself when it comes to ADHD and cooking. I feel like there's a lot out there about the struggles, which are so real, and I'm so glad they're being validated. And then I'm glad that there's also solutions, which people like you are bringing up. But I also think that there's this element of needing to spark joy, because when we talk about the difficulty of starting task initiation, like that is low dopamine at its core. And so I think a lot about how so many ADHDers are creative. And if we can kind of tap into our creativity when it comes to cooking and spark that interest, it'll get us moving. And then it's a wonderful cycle there, right? Because you're building confidence, you're, using creative energy, which begets more creative energy. So I am also curious, was there anyone you spoke with who likes cooking or has interest in it and is facing barriers, but was able to find any kind of joy or excitement out of it? Or was it really just people coming to you because it was this behemoth task that they were kind of dreading?
A lot of people, I don't know if most of them, had instances where they actually just wanted to cook and felt motivated to try something new or to spend time in the kitchen more as a creative task than, okay, I just need to feed myself. I think that it goes again to this balance and flexibility thing that we were mentioning in the past, where sometimes you actually do want to spend time in the kitchen and you do want to just try new things and just be creative and have fun with it. And we did hear a lot about the part of how can you make it fun for yourself? Can you play some music in the background and just sort of make it a task that is enjoyable and not overwhelming? And how do you do that? How do you implement even things like gamification into the process of okay, I'm gonna prep food? And it was something that we were exploring as we were building the tool. How can we make it fun and at the same time not overwhelming, and keep finding this balance? But yeah, I think it's something that it's as well part of the nature of just people with ADHD. Just making things fun and enjoyable is something that's just in the core of completing any tasks, really.
Yeah, that's something I think about a lot. So often I think solutions around ADHD can be so kind of medicalized and dry and boring. And I'm very happy for the research, of course, but I'm happy to also see people approaching it with a little bit more fun and excitement, because I think there truly is an element of that needing to be a component if it's going to resonate with ADHDers and get us to actually follow through on whatever the recommendation or advice is. And to that end, you guys have a very fun ADHD Weasel is your front. When we had a call earlier, I was kind of giving you guys a hard time about being behind the camera and who is this weasel? And is it just an AI bot? It's not. So pivoting away from the practical food piece, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your process writing your Substack and, how this newsletter comes together to make the ADHD Weasel.
Yeah, a lot of the sort of like what we're gonna write in terms of topic and ideas, and even the approach that we want to take, came from our research process, really, and just talking to ADHDers. From the meal planning research process, we probably talked to over 200 ADHDers without really including the practitioners or professors that we talked in the university, or more like a serious setting. Just in the day-to-day aspect, we had a lot of ideas and a lot of like input from these calls that we had, and we just had a list of things that we personally were struggling with, and we just wanted to dive into and just research and understand and come up with practices and tips and solutions. It was like, okay, we have like a list of things that we want to like dive into, and we actually just ended up like, okay, let's explore time blindness or task initiation, meal planning. Like, there are so many things that came up from the calls and from our personal like discovery process as ADHDers, that it felt really natural, and it has remained that way. Now that we're talking to our readers again, it's like we're refreshing all of these like topics and like need for solutions. So it's a really organic process, I would say.
Yeah, having talked to like 200 people, it was sort of ingrained in our head, like what are the top things people are struggling with. And it was almost very natural for us to get into the newsletter, because we had just talked to so many of like people with ADHD, and us ourselves struggling with the symptoms as well. So yeah, it was a very natural process, just writing about things that we're interested in, that people are struggling with. And yeah, that's how it came about.
So if someone subscribes to ADHD Weasel, like what do they get?
If you initially subscribe as a free subscriber, you're gonna get like 3 newsletters on a weekly basis. The first one is going to be that we just started as of yesterday. It's going to be like a Monday reset. That's what we're calling it. It's going to be a very like less than 300 words, just one technique, one framework that might help you get started with the week. And our idea with that one is we're going to touch on different topics. So yesterday's was task initiation. I think the next week is executive function. So very short, very quick read. The Wednesday and Saturday ones are kind of getting morphed. Like initially, the Wednesday ones were like a deep dive into a specific aspect, like task avoidance. And then we do like a deep dive, read up on research articles, see what people are saying, and then break that concept down, and then give practical suggestions on what might work for people struggling with this. And then along with that, a worksheet. And the Saturday ones are more personal reflections. They're mostly things that are working for me and Esteban. And yeah, we just talk about it.
And it really is a mix of worksheets and articles, which I thought was interesting, because as I'm working on my cookbook, Not From Concentrate, which doesn't come out for a very long time, February of 2027, but from the proposal, I knew there needed to be a worksheet piece because of the things I think that you were talking about, of it's so individualized and we're in these different cycles. So how are you thinking about your worksheets, and how do you put them together?
Yeah, that's something we're still figuring out right now. Like, we don't have the answer to that. And I think it's interesting because like having talked to this past month, we talked to, I think like 12, 13 of our readers, and a lot of them said, oh, like I download these worksheets and it's an ADHD thing, right? Like you save the tab, you open it in a new tab, and you just never get around to it. So one of the things, that's why we like started with the Monday newsletter, is like a very small, it's not even a worksheet, it's like embedded into the newsletter. And it's like 3 questions. Basically, get a scrap of paper and like fill out. You don't even have to print anything, because yeah, the more hurdles there are to actually do the thing, it's probably going to go into the do it later list, and you're probably not going to get around to it.
Coming from the startup sort of like world, and Ammaar and I, when we met and how we started our sort of like working relationship, was always like, okay, let's just build a startup or project. And it was always like a really iterative and MVP process, where it's like, okay, let's just push it out, see what happens, see what people say, and just iterate on that. We have never had the the feeling that it's like, okay, this is a finished version set in stone. Let's just like keep this format forever. It's always been a really like, let's look for feedback. Let's see what people are saying. Let's just like try it ourselves. Does it work for us? Does it not? Like, it's really iterative in nature. I think that it's really from our sort of like startup foundations. And we really have tried to keep that as the edge of what we do, really. Really for the worksheets, as Ammaar mentioned, like we probably change something in our worksheets every week. Same for the newsletter. And we have a lot of really big changes ahead of us in the next month or so. And hopefully it stays that way, because it's really the only way to stay on top of like improving. It's just really iterating and getting feedback. So we really don't have a solution for the worksheet problem of like people downloading it with the best intentions and wanting to do it but not doing it. And like we're jumping in calls with our readers and brainstorming with them how we can do it better. So who knows, maybe in a month or two we'll have something completely different for the worksheet process. But that's just part of the nature of how we operate, really.
Well, and it's been successful because you guys are, last time I looked, you were like number 25 in wellness. You have thousands and thousands of subscribers. I think that is a great thing for people to remember who are creating on Substack too. Most of our listeners, that is not their jam, but I know people are figuring out, how to succeed on this platform. And so I think as a creative and a writer, it's very easy to just think about things that I feel like need to be said or I want to say. And I think it's a good lesson to remember to shut up and listen sometimes to what other people want. Who is actually writing the newsletter and how are you synthesizing, all of the information?
We take turns, essentially. Sometimes, as Ammaar said, it depends really on the newsletter. We alternate between who writes what. We already have like some sort of process of like, okay, we always like review it in a similar way, but the more of like creative part of it, we sort of like alternate that. And in terms of just like how it happens, it's just really, sometimes I just really want to dive into, for example, ADHD and exercise. And I'll sort of like take that as a more of like a personal thing and a personal deep dive. And then after like the learnings, I'll take it back and sort of like show it to Ammaar, and then we'll go into like reviewing and editing the process together.
And we take advantage of our like ADHD hyper-focus superpowers. And yeah, just if we're interested in something, we take advantage of it, just get into it. And yeah, there have been weekends where like we're really into just in the zone, and then we just like draft a bunch of them. And then in the following weeks, we just like clean it up, make sure, everything's looking good.
Well, it's very impressive. You guys, the output is tremendous. So I don't know how much time you have to cook in all of this, but I do have to put you through the busy brain portion of the podcast. I do this with every episode. And I have 2 questions that I'd love for you both to answer if you can. So I think that the key to cooking well with ADHD is you need to spark creativity for yourself, and then you need to calm the chaos. And that can be physical chaos or mental chaos. So I would love it if each of you could tell me, when you do cook for yourselves, what is one thing you do to spark creativity, and what is one thing you do to calm the chaos?
I sort of mentioned it in the first section of the podcast. Something that really works for me is playing music. For some reason, like if I have like music and I'm like cooking, it feels like, the creative juices are flowing and I'm just like trying new stuff, and it's much more fun to cook or do anything. If I have like nothing in the background and it's just like complete silence, it feels like the time just goes by way slower. Like I have to like cook, and then I'm like there staring at the chicken, and it's just like, cooking, and I'm just like staring, and it just gets boring, and I just get sidetracked, and then I'm not cooking, and then I'm stressed because the chicken and it's burning. If there's music, it somehow works better for me. And then that's for the creativity part of it. Then the other question was to calm the chaos.
So I've had people who say like, I have to go for a run first because my brain is so swirly, or other people that are like, I have to clean off my counter space, or I have to wipe down the fridge. And it's okay if you don't have one either. It's just something I always like to find out if people have specific practices there.
Yeah, maybe something that works. It's just like cleaning as I go. It's something that I learned probably later in my university journey. But I used to feel really overwhelmed after like cooking about like cleaning the dishes, that it almost made me not want to cook ever, and just like push me towards like the simple meals. Like, okay, I'll just open a can of tuna and just eat it with some crackers, and I'm just gonna call that a meal. Just because of like cleaning the dishes was like such a mental like exercise of thinking, okay, like I'm gonna have another chore after cooking that I'm not even gonna enjoy it because I have to clean the dishes. So implementing the cleaning as I go practice made it a lot better, and I think was a big part of my like cooking chaos. I'm not like always following it because I really don't like cleaning. So, but when I do clean as I go, it makes it so much better, and it actually makes the meal taste better because I can enjoy it and not really focus about the plates getting all crusty there because I'm not rinsing water all over them. And
You're young. You will figure this out. If you ask my husband, in my 20s, I was a tornado in the kitchen, as I think how he would describe it. And now at the ripe old age of 40, I know to clean as I go. So it sounds like you're on the right track.
that's encouraging for sure.
What about you, Ammaar? You're in a dorm, so I don't know how much you're cooking, but curious what your experience is.
I really like the idea of like creativity, and I think that like, you know, being creative in the kitchen makes you want to like cook more. I really like that aspect. I think it puts into words the experience I have, and the way I like to do it is trying new just ingredients. So for example, if I'm making a smoothie, I'll like put something new. I'll like granola or chocolates. That's something that I haven't done before. Or maybe like a different combination. It's like a very low risk thing, but like I don't know the outcome. So that's what makes it fun. Like after it's done and I taste it, I'm like, oh, is this good or bad? So I think that's something I do. And then for calming the chaos, I think I'm going to steal one thing you said, which was like cleaning the counters. I like, yeah, need to clean up the counters, make sure the counters have enough space for everything. I think, yeah, that's one thing for calming the chaos.
Amazing. And my last question is just what's next for the ADHD Weasel and you two, as much as you can share?
I think we're going to keep going. We've just started this newsletter in Feb, and then both of us sort of started prioritizing it in like April, I'd say. So yeah, it's still very young. And so yeah, we're just going to keep going. We don't really know what's next, but it's just more newsletters for sure. And yeah, we're just going to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to echo what Ammaar just said. It's really just, we're just going to keep going, and we'll continue to have our sort of like options open in terms of like what to do next, what sort of formats to try. We're really excited because we did like October for us was like a regrouping sort of month where we would just like, let's go back and just have calls with our users. Let's just like hear them out, because we felt some sort of like, I don't want to say like disconnect, but since we started the project and we were talking to users of the app before, and it was pretty much like part of our daily routine. And since we started writing, we sort of like went into a focus zone of like, let's just like write and let's just like talk to each other, and almost like, of course, talking to users and readers on like the sidelines, but it was not the core of what we were doing. So October was a really, yeah, I want to say regrouping, but it was more like recharging energies and understanding really what role we play in our readers' sort of like routine and life. So it was a really successful month for our understanding of ourselves in the like landscape of what people do and what people need for the newsletter. So we're really excited into implementing these learnings and insights from the calls in the following months. So we're just going to keep going with these new learnings, essentially.
Busy-brained listeners, that is a great lesson. They actually slowed down for a second and it was beneficial. That is such a hard thing to do, and it's almost always advisable. Everybody should go to, is it ADHDweasel.substack.com? How do we find you?
Yeah, I think that would work. And also ADHDweasel.com.
So ADHDweasel.com, sign up for the newsletter, get a taste of it, and then upgrade to paid if it's something that you're really into. I am a paid subscriber and I recommend it.
Thank you so much for the time and the space. And yeah, as Ammaar said, we're really excited and we would love to have you as a guest writer whenever you have the chance.
Well, Ammaar and Esteban, thank you so much for spending time today and sharing the insights from the many conversations you've had with the ADHD community and telling us a little bit more about the ADHD Weasel. I'm so excited for everybody to check it out and learn from this community and continue to figure out ways to avoid food overwhelm and feed ourselves well. And you. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Esteban and Ammaar and that you're feeling seen if you've ever struggled with meal planning or keeping yourself well fed. And I hope you're feeling inspired by the grit and curiosity of these two young founders. I do have a favor to ask before you go. If you could take a minute to rate and review this podcast, wherever you get it, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon, it really helps people find our show. And if you enjoyed today's episode, it would be wonderful if you could share it with a fellow food-loving, busy-brained friend. All right, thanks, and I'll see you next time.